Warning, this program features viewpoints of our host, our guest. They're their own viewpoints. These viewpoints may not represent other hosts, other guests, individuals, or their employers. So please enjoy the show.
Welcome back, all my beautiful listeners, to Put 'em on the Glass podcast. And I am your host, Ghost Set Killer. And our guest today is
Abby Bowman with AGRR.
AGRR, the Auto Glass Magazine. The Auto Glass Magazine. So I've been keeping up with that magazine like a lot more now. And it's because you seem to have your finger right on the pulse of the industry. Like, coming from outside our industry, how hard was that transition to make sure that you stayed on top of important factors to us?
Yeah, so it was one of those things where obviously anytime you first get put into something new, you're a little bit lost, right? But the transition actually wasn't as bad as you might think, because obviously I had, people at AGR like Deb, and then, the head of the editorial department, Ellen, to help, keep me on track. But also everybody in the industry was so incredibly welcoming that, even when I didn't know exactly the terms that I was talking about, or, was still figuring things out, people were more than happy to explain things to me or be patient with me and whatnot, while I, maybe was using terms wrong or asking them to explain things more maybe than they would have to, if that makes sense. So, I think that actually went a lot more smoothly than even I was expecting.
Well, I mean, that's good that our industry was so open and welcoming to where you felt comfortable enough to ask questions. Because sometimes I know outside of other industries going in, asking questions sometimes can be intimidating. So like I can get how that would be. Well, good. At least we were welcoming. So that makes me feel proud as an industry member that we were welcoming enough to you. Now, all of these articles are like, in the past, the articles were good. And we always read them. Glass Bites, we always read the AGRR. But like, when you came aboard, it took on a more of a personal flair for me that I really, really appreciate. You dig deeper than just the superficial top of what's going on in those articles. Is that just your nature? Is that the way you are? Or is that something you had to practice and work on, to become a better at your career?
Yeah, so I think that is something that's definitely in my nature. I like to call myself a chronically curious person, if that makes sense. And I could be entertained. I could literally be entertained watching paint dry, if that makes sense. And so that was a big part of it. Another part of it was, growing and developing my journalistic skills. Like I said, with Deb, with Ellen, and they would help teach me like, hey, these are the things to look out for and whatnot. Another big part of it was I was just loving learning the industry. I was loving learning how things worked, learning and talking to people in the industry. I think that's probably the biggest part, honestly, of what allows me to really dig in depth into issues, is having conversations with people in the industry. So, when I'm calling people up for an interview, depending on, what time crunch or whatnot they're under, frequently we're having a little bit of conversation as well. And they're telling me about things that are going on and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. And unfortunately, not everybody in the industry can have as big a personality as me. So sorry, guys. Just kidding. We have a lot of great personalities, a lot of great people, a lot of people that care. What you said there, being chronically curious, is amazing, because I'm so pumped. During the Auto Glass Safety Council week, I found out that you were going to take training with Mr. Jacques Navant.
Yes.
How excited were you for that?
That I was so excited. So that was something that I had really wanted to do since I joined the magazine. And, Deb worked with Jacques to make it a reality. And I was extremely pumped.
So you did the 3 mini trainings. You did repair, you did replacement, and you did calibrations, in which you did all those step by step, every step yourself, being guided and walked through by Jacques and Jose, correct?
Yeah, so it was actually Kevin, I believe, was the
Oh, okay.
technician that I was
Okay.
working with, and then Jacob was the technician I was working with for the recalibration. So shout out to both of them; they were both
Yeah.
incredibly patient. And I needed that patience too. But yeah, no, Jacques made sure that I got hands-on with every single step, which is good. That is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to um both see and feel what it is that technicians do multiple times on a daily basis. I think the conclusion that I came to with the replacement is I don't want to lift a windshield that much. I was fine. I mean, I did it. I made
Yeah.
sure to take
Yeah.
it, and then bring it over. And then, of course, they helped me with the setting tools to make sure I wasn't breaking anybody's car or breaking a
Yeah.
windshield. But that I think really gave me an appreciation for it's like, okay, I knew this is heavy, but now I really know what it feels like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it really pumped me up because of the fact that you were having all these great articles, and now you were curious enough to jump into our shoes and see what we see from our perspective. We all started somewhere once. And granted, we didn't start with the training that you received from Jacques and his boys. I mean, that's like the gold star, you know what I mean? Like that's like a dream team kind of training. Most of us were put in a van with a gentleman and was out for 2 days, 3 days, and then the rest of the week you're throwing a van with 8 jobs and figure it out. And that's a lot of how our industry rolled. So I was so pumped to see you going in and then seeing the pictures, and it was just, honestly, it made me happy on so many levels. My heart smiled. I was so proud of the industry, and I was so proud of everybody who made it happen for you, because it was like, yes, she knows. And not only is she putting these great articles out now, if she gets in a situation where she's like, no, I don't think that's quite right what you're telling me, because I've been in this situation kind of thing. So, well, what was your favorite part about the training?
There was so many things. It's honestly hard to narrow it down. Honestly, I think the thing that I liked doing the most was probably the repair. I think the repair and the recalibration are ones, like, I'm obviously not ready to go out and do either one of those on my own right now. But I think with a little bit of practice, that could be something that I could actually get good at myself, right?
Mm.
And so I think I was really fascinated by like the precision behind a recalibration, which again, that was something that I was already knew was a thing, but to be able to get hands-on and put my hands on the equipment and see just what difference like a few millimeters sliding the targets would be, and all that stuff, I think that was probably part of my favorite. And then as far as the replacement goes, I had so much fun learning how to run a bead.
Oh, it's the hardest part. I mean, I understand the rest of it's pretty hard, but like as a trainer, not mean to cut you off there, but as a trainer, like the hardest part for me is to portray how important the bead is and how much practice it takes to be good at it, you know?
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like most of my beads were terrible because I was running them. Jock had, an old windshield for me to run them on. But it got to the point where I was like, okay, this bead, it might be a little wobbly, but at least it looks like a V bead. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And Jock managed to get a picture of exactly that one. So I appreciated him being nice and doing that.
Nice. Well, it's a journey that all of us technicians have to take, is the hardest part, and becoming aware that that's the most important part. Obviously, there's a lot of integral steps into what we do. You have to make sure the cleanliness is there. You have to make sure, but if your bead's not right, your set's not going to be right. And if your set's not right, then you have the potential of having, when it's in an accident, you have a failure point. So for me, I'm so glad you said that it's a fun to run. And when you know what I mean, but it takes a lot of practice. It really does take a lot of practice. That right there is the one part of training I wish could be a whole week long of nothing but you understand how urethane works, molecule to molecule. You understand how, the bonding chain comes together. Now, let's put it in practice, and practice for a whole week with nothing but demo cars or something like that. That would be a dream training, because that part to me is so important, that of spending a whole week on a bead would not be out of the question for me. Now, coming from someone who doesn't have that experience, would you think that that's an accurate assessment?
I would think so. I mean, I think, it took me plenty of time, fiddling with the dispenser to try and get the setting just right so that I
Hmm.
wasn't like too heavy or too light on the trigger. And I'm like, yeah, I really would have appreciated, if I were going to be doing that on a regular basis, getting a lot more hands-on experience before, somebody's life or lives depended on it, like you said.
Yeah. Well, and then you talked about the precision of calibrations, and I invite any technician to do this because we have a lot of like, you've been in these meetings back and forth about all this stuff. But what you need to do is, in my opinion, is when you set up for a calibration, before you do anything in the car, read the live data on that camera and take a picture of it. Okay. And read the live data. Like, seriously, read your yaw, pitch, and roll, read your car width, read everything that's in there. Then set the window, and before you calibrate, read the live data again and see the difference of how far of a difference there is between your set, which is probably pretty close, but bracketry is probably not there. But you can see the millimeter of difference, and then you realize that, listen, 1 degree can make 16 inches at, what is it, 4 foot or something like that. I know my measurements are probably off, but 16 inches at 4 to 8 feet, that's completely off the road, before it's warning you, and you're like, and the algorithm's made for this back and forth and everything. But then calibrate it and then read your live data again and see where you're at. It's like such a fun experiment for people to do, to realize how critical it is and how minute it has to be. So that's my little rant. But being new, cutting out a windshield, because this is the hardest, disassemble and everything, but for most people, the hardest part other than the bead is cutting a windshield out. You got to use a revolutionary tool. What tool did you use to cut the windshield out with?
The Jacques Frog It Out tool.
Jacques Frog It Out tool. Now I have one. I have yet to receive my training because I've been so busy and everything. But cutting a windshield out with the training you had, how easy or difficult was it?
I would say, it was using the tool was extremely easy. It was very intuitive, I think would be the word that I would use for it. Now, something that you need to know about Jacques when he does his training is he's a little bit evil. He rigs things too. Now, don't quote me on that in general. I don't think Jacques evil, but when he does his training, he sets it up so that there's certain points where it will fail and the line will break, or other things. So you get the experience of what happens when something goes wrong in the real world, right? And so even with that, like even when he rigged the line to break a couple times and whatnot, Kevin, the technician that I was working with, and Jacques helped me, get it reset back up, and we were good to go. So yeah, I really enjoyed using it.
Yeah. Now I'm a firm believer in the wire tool, and I've used the wire tool for many, many years, and I understand they're very dangerous. They can cut pinch welds off. But in general, it's an easier tool. It actually extended my career because my elbows don't hurt as bad anymore. My shoulders don't hurt as bad anymore. But I'm used to using the orange bat. I used Equalizer's Raptor. My first one was the Equalizer Viper, and then the Raptor, and then I moved on. Now I've got the bat, and got the bat down to a science. But I'm actually really excited for the Frog. It's amazing. Like, I can't wait for that tool to be just everywhere, to where everybody's talking about, hey, I got the Frog, and it cut this windshield out, and it was gravy, and it worked, beautifully. Because I know it's coming, because I think he's sold a few, and I think that we're going to start seeing more and more of those posts, and I can't wait. And I can't wait to get my training, but I just got to kind of slow down a little bit for what's going on. But the movement that we're seeing right now, and why I'm asking you so much about this, is we're seeing a lot more women coming into our industry and taking center stage almost. Like, they are coming in, and there have been women installers for a long time, women technicians for a shorter time, but actually women installers, when we all were installers, we weren't really taken seriously. But we're seeing more and more women technicians. Now, the growth of it, is this going to keep going? Do you agree?
I think so. Obviously, I am not the expert here, but I think, like you said, they've always been around. But now they're finally taking the stage that they deserve, if that makes sense. And I mean that quite literally, competing at Auto Glass Week and doing very well.
Oh yeah, Jamie and Heather murdered it this year. Just being the first women competitors, just slayed it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was like, yeah, and it was delightful to chat with both of them because of how passionate they were about glass, but then also advocating for more women to get into the industry. And I think that is one of the big things, is the more women you actually see doing it, the more other women are going to be like, okay, I could do that. It would be really hard, but I can do it, And so, yeah, I see that increasing.
Your opinion, the actual, because you've not used the older tools, but a lot of the women who are transitioning. But do you agree, though, with your non-experience in jumping into it, you felt you could learn it, and the tools were a big help, correct? Setting windshield with a setting tool and cutting out with the frog?
Oh yeah, yeah, no, I think absolutely the tools, tools like the frog and others that are making things a little easier physically on all technicians would definitely make it easier for anyone who's a little bit smaller to get in the industry.
Yeah, I gotcha. And then, like, okay, for me, women have more, in my personal life,
Yeah.
some gentlemen may have it too, but they have more attention to detail. Did you find yourself during that being just super critical on yourself during it, even though you're in the learning phase? You're like, man, I didn't do that correct. Because I know I do that, but like if my wife's a certified technician, repair and replacement. She's never done a replacement, but she knows all the ins and outs. But I could see her not leaving a bead until it was absolutely perfect. Is that something that you found struggled with coming into it?
Yeah, I think that was definitely something where I was like, and I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. I have this problem. If I don't do it exactly right the first time, I'm like, that's it. We're never doing that again. Not actually, but you know what I'm saying. So I think that also, both as a woman with the higher attention to detail, which is something that Jamie pointed out to me when I talked with her, as well as, like I said, being a recovering perfectionist, I think I was also hyper aware of watching, Kevin and Jacques as they were demonstrating what to do and trying to notice the motions and figure out exactly, what they were doing. And then also kind of figuring out my own way to do things. Because, different height, different anatomy and whatnot, you got to stand at different angles to get to things. And so, yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's where, absolutely. And that's where platforms and everything come into it. But I don't know you on a certain level, but I know friends who are, I honestly, what you said there is if you don't get it right the first time, I honestly think that's an ADHD thing. Anybody who has it, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to call anybody out. And if you do have it, Abby, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to call you out. If you don't have it, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to call you out. But I honestly think that recovering perfectionist thing, I think a lot of people in our industry could benefit from that, who are dealing with the ADHD, ADD, and other like autism things, because we are so super critical because we've been so bad at things that, like I've said in the past, I've not been diagnosed, but I understand what you're talking about. If you're not good at something at first, it has two switches with our ADHD people. You either get so involved that you really become good at it and nothing will slow you down, or it's the opposite. I ain't doing that again, dude. What the heck? You know what I mean? I failed, kind of thing. So I think that a female coming into the industry who has both of those, the attention to detail, and then has that super perfectionist because maybe ADHD or something like that, that it could turn into an amazing technician, like an amazing calibration, repair, or replacement technician. You need a little bit of that. It just bugs you enough to, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And I understand like a lot of technicians out there don't have that because they're just like, oh, I put it in, it's a job, it's gone. But like the ones who really take themselves seriously and are professionals, you have to have that little bit of, I could have done better. Let's figure out how to do better. Okay. So besides that, we talked about the movement of the women in the future. You said it. Tools are going to lead the way. And I think we're going to see more and more women in our industry and in the trades in general. But I do think that we're moving in that direction to where we may see a lot more women competitors this year. So I hope so. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So any articles to look out for in AGRR magazine?
Well, James, you mentioned the ADHD in the industry. And yes, I do have ADHD. I think that both the attention to detail and then also to the desire to be, perfect as much as I can be the first time does come from that. But there's a lot of interesting both struggles and triumphs that having ADHD brings to the industry. And I know that because I've talked to a number of very successful people in the industry who also have it. And there's an article in the issue that will be coming out here very shortly, the January, February, March issue, diving into that. And honestly, James, I got to tell you, it's probably my favorite article that I've written for AGRR so far.
I'm pumped. I am pumped. Like, I've had a few episodes on mental health, one on ADHD with my good friend Matt Kerbo when he was on my, it wasn't scripted, and it just kind of took that direction. I'm so glad it did, because it's one of my most watched, listened to episodes, and everybody loves it. And then I just had my friend Anthony with Vent on, talking about it. And I know some technicians in our industry is like, what does that have to do with auto glass? And kind of give me a little bit of flack. But to be honest with you, it has to do with life. And you're an auto glass technician, but you're also a human being. And it has to do with life. And if you can be better in all aspects of your life, why would you not want to learn those things, kind of thing. So, but I'm looking forward to that. So everybody get ready to get your magazine coming up. If you do not have a subscription, buy a subscription. You have it on digital format and a publication, right, that comes to the house?
Yeah, and I will also mention, James, it is actually free to subscribe to AGRR magazine and Glass Bites as well. So, even more reason to do it.
I knew that. I was baiting you.
I know.
Okay, so we're right at 20 minutes, and we've covered a bulk of what I kind of wanted to talk about in that. Now we're going to switch gears, because you and I both have a huge role coming up in September.
Yes.
What do we got coming up in September, Abby?
Hey everybody, Dave with Auto Glass Helpline here. Going to do a quick video for our boy James over at Put 'em on the Glass podcast. If you don't know him, look him up. He's got a lot of good information on his podcast, a lot of great guests in the glass industry. And we're going to talk blade sharpening today. So we have our WRD Stingray blades, and we have one flat blade here with the rounded corners. And this guy, which you never sharpen the blade, you just add a new blade to it. We have our WRD Pro Scraper Kit here, Pro Scraper Kit, which has our honing stone. One side is a little bit finer than the other. I put a little X on the corner so I can find out really quick. It also comes with this round tool, round file, has a nice little flat edge on it, and a tapered edge for getting in and sharpening the curves here on your Stingray. So just real quick, we are going to do a little quick honing, a quick sharpening on our Stingray blade here. And depending on how many nicks, how many scratches, how much damage you have to your blade, and how badly it needs to be sharpened, you're going to take your blade and your stone, and you are simply going to find the proper angle. You can look on the back of your blade here, and always push away from yourself when you are doing this. And because it's early and I forgot to put them on, put on some cut resistant gloves too, so you don't do one of these numbers and lay your thumb open. So that aside, you're going to find your right angle here. You're going to take this, going to give it a little bit of an angle, and you're just going to drive it forward to the end of the stone. Do that a few times, and then you can check the back here to see if you have the right angle. Do it a few more times, and you're just going to keep doing this until you get rid of any little nicks that you see along the edge of your blade here. And you're pushing away, because when you push away from yourself like this against the edge of the blade, you're helping prevent getting burrs on here. You still will have some, but it'll reduce it. You don't want to just sit here and back and forth unless you're in a hurry, but always come back and do it right. That is the stone. And then you also have your little round file here. A little round file does awesome for sharpening the inside of these curves on your Stingray blade. And you can do both sides here. And then on your flat blade, or on the flat part of your blade here, you're going to see that you have a little bit of a, not a burr, but a little bit of metal there that you need to remove. And what I do is I take the flat edge of this guy here, and I will run it against, again, you're going to run it against the edge of the blade, and you're just going to run it up like this. And that'll help get rid of that little flap of metal that develops as you're sharpening. What that also does is if you run it from the top side, it will add a small bevel at the top edge right here, and that small bevel will actually help keep your blade down in the urethane as you're trimming across. So the bevel on the back side will keep you from digging into your paint. The bevel on the top side will continue to drive the blade down just enough to keep you cutting smooth right across the top of that, or right across the lower edge of that urethane, instead of having it jump out. So, and again, you got your rounded edge here for inside these curvatures on the Stingray blade. As far as our flat blade here, our flat blade is going to be pretty much the same, just without having to use the round edge on the file. These ones have a nice little curved edge here to help you keep from digging into the pinch weld, but you're going to do the exact same thing. You're simply going to find the right angle, and you're going to drive this along here, and you're going to keep going until you get rid of any of the burrs or any of the nicks and scratches, or not scratches, but any of the deep nicks that you have in this that dull the blade. So, and then as you come around that little curved edge, you can just lift, I don't know how well you can see this, but you can lift that edge just a little bit as you go across to sharpen that little curvature there. So, like so. And then again, you can take your flat side of your round file, and you're going to do the same thing here. You're just going to run that on that edge, give it a nice little bevel to keep you down in the urethane as you trim. So that is a quick and dirty sharpening of the WRD Stingray blades as well as the flat blade. And if you guys have any questions, hit me up at Autoglass Helpline. And if you can't find me, you can find James at the Put 'em on the Glass podcast. And we'll hope to see you guys in the future. Have a great day.
Well, so I think one of the things is this past year with Auto Glass Week, we really put a lot of effort into putting more stuff on, the floor, and a lot of, I guess I'll call them extracurricular activities or special events. And that's something that we're really going to see even ramped up more this year. So I can't necessarily tell you much about the educational sessions yet, because those are still in progress. We're still developing those, which is great. That means we can fit a lot of good stuff in there. And if anybody has any suggestions, feel free to reach out to me. But there are going to be lots of really awesome, demonstrations and whatnot on the floor. There's going to be, we're going to do the mystery dinner again this year that we did last year. We're even going to have an Auto Glass trivia night, which I am super excited about.
Wait, I'm part of the crew. I'm not judging this year, but I'm part of the crew, I think. Will I be able to do that one?
That is a good question, James, and I am going to find out for you, because I feel like that would be something you would be amazing at. So.
Oh, I don't know if I'd be amazing at it, but I would love it. It would be just, I would love that. That would be so much fun. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the trivia.
And also, the top dealers last year, we gave out the awards for those who made the top dealer list in AGRR magazine. We're doing that again this year, and I think it's even going to be bigger and better than ever. I won't give you too many details because I'd like to be able to have people have the experience, but yeah.
Well, we're looking at 20 years of the competition, and we're looking at 25 years of our standard. So this is a big blowout year. We're in the West Coast, and we've been harped on since I've been doing the Auto Glass Weeks. Why aren't you in the West Coast? Why aren't you in the West Coast? So I so hope my East Coast brothers and sisters follow me, and I hope my West Coast brothers and sisters come out and show out and just, put on your best dress. Let's go with a best dress competition for Put 'em on the Glass. You know what I mean? Show up on one of the days, I'll try to work something out, because show up with your best dress, come out with your gear on, make sure you're presentable. Everybody's always presentable. Brand yourself up, be professional, get out there. 20 and 25, this is going to be a big show, because not only did you mention the demos, which, where I thought the demos went really well last year for an experiment, because it was just Trisha, it was her mind child. She was just like, hey, let's, and then she did such an amazing job with the demos. I had so much fun on my demo, it was great. We always had around 100 people surrounding us. We never had a small crowd. And I think those are things that our technicians that are coming to these shows would like to see, is an actual hands-on demo. They hear about it. This is the way. Well, now we're showing you the AGRR Auto Glass Week way. The competitions, though, the competitions. The pink jacket is making a comeback. There were some people pumped about it last year. Jorge won it, and it's making a comeback, everybody. The pink jacket's making a comeback. So please sign up to compete, because competition registration's open, correct?
It is, yes. You can go to autoglassweek.com and sign up there.
And let's put the sense of urgency in, because last year we had people on waiting list. Okay. Let's put this in perspective, everybody that's listening to this. We had technicians on waiting list that couldn't make it because we ran out, because we didn't know early enough how many cars we needed. And we bumped it and we bumped it and we bumped it until the fire marshal was like, you cannot put any more cars in this building. So I think we had like double digits on the waiting list. We had a lot of people, and we had like 30 or 34 competitors or somewhere in there for the replacement competition. So get signed up early to make sure that you secure your spot. Come out and have some fun. Like I said, I am not judging this year, but I'm going to be there doing some things, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Honestly, I'm so pumped. Like last year I was pumped to be judging, but this year, like, I don't know if I can release what I'm doing yet or not, so we're going to keep that under wraps, but I'm going to be having so much fun. It's going to be so great. What are you looking forward to the most, Abby, from Autoglass Week?
Well, James, like I said, there are so many things going on. It really is hard to pick. Side note, I think that's another ADHD trait, is not being able to pick one thing that is your favorite or that you're most looking forward to. But genuinely, I think it is probably watching the competitions. Now, for me, now that I've had a little bit of hands-on experience, right? Getting my hands on a car, getting my hands on a windshield, I think it's going to be even cooler for me to watch everybody compete and be like, okay, I know what it is they're doing. You know, I knew before, but like knowing even better now, like it's different, right? And I think that also I'm always excited for like the special events, the extracurricular. I think that, networking and meeting people and talking to people is one of my favorite things to do. And so I think it's really valuable when other people can do that as well.
Well, the networking in 2019 was my first year in Indianapolis, and I wasn't expecting the networking. I traveled by myself for that one, and I went to everything and anything that was available. I paid for the full, for the full pass, and anything and everything that was available. I mean, I remember Holly, they were setting up at like 5 a.m., but I had nothing to do, and I was already up. So I just went down and sat while they were setting everything up. And she was like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm waiting on this thing to start. She's like, it doesn't start till 7, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I just drank some coffee and chill out. But like all those events, but then the networking, in 2019, I made this great networking group of people that I still valuable to this day. Like, honestly, like all these people still mean so much to me. I've developed so many great friendships that I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, honestly, all my competing and even winning, I would trade that for the friends that I have in the industry now. And this event is the only event that we have that we can do that at, in my opinion. It's pretty dope. I'm not going to lie. And the networking's great. And, the murder theater, I didn't get to go to last year, the mystery dinner, which is a networking event. Am I correct there? That's a networking event. Yes. I was judging, so we were super late, trying to really nitpick who was going there. But yeah, I heard that it was a great event. Did you attend it?
I did. Yeah, I went to, and I had a table at one of the restaurants, and I got to know some really cool people from all across the country. We exchanged business cards and whatnot, and I was able to talk to them for articles later. So yeah, exactly. It's valuable connections that you make that are then going to both increase your knowledge of the industry, but then also, give you people to ask questions later on.
Yeah. And it's a world stage. We have competitors from all over the world. I mean, it's definitely a world stage. So one thing that I was surprised about in 2019 was I was thinking it was just US based, but no, it's a world stage. There was competitors and people from all over, and it is a great event. And I really do think that it's going to be great this year, and I can't wait for this to progress, and the little things that's going to start raining out. It's just going to get more and more people excited, and I think that it's, then we have the AGSC meetings earlier that week, so that's something else that you could plan on. You're going to be there later on in the week, but you could come to the meetings at the beginning part of the week because they're open. You don't actually have to be on the committee to come in and sit in and listen. Your voice can be heard, but you can't vote on things. So I highly encourage, get involved in our industry. That's how our industry grows. That's how we learn, because sometimes we don't, especially a shop like mine where we were secluded in independence, we don't realize the struggles that other places are having, so it's definitely eye-opening in that aspect. So where do you see our industry going? Like, do you see us, because it's kind of scary right now.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of part of what I want to touch on is I've really learned to admire the tenacity of those in the industry, because they've got to deal with lots of things that people in other industries don't have to deal with, like dealing with, insurance in particular ways and, TPAs and things like that. As well as, there's lots of legislation that's coming around the country, some of which will be helpful, but some of which does make things a little bit more difficult for shops, right? And so I think, and again, I, am not an expert here, but from what I have observed with everyone that I've talked to, I think we're going to see a lot of increasing innovation, people getting creative to do their jobs. And not in a way that defies safety. I think continuing to follow safety standards, follow the AGRR standard, but in ways where people are putting their heads together and going, okay, here's a problem, here's a difficulty that we have, let's band together and find a solution. I also think that with the prevalence of ADAS increasing in cars, and then of course the need for recalibration, that is going to become, it's already an integral part of auto glass shops, but it's going to increase even more.
Yeah, that was a bump in the road for a lot of us. We were used to doing our job safely a certain way for a long time. We had the standard, first come out 25 years ago, but prior to that, you had like your Chevy training, your Ford training, all those trainings to help. And it was pretty much along the same. We changed adhesives, we changed retention systems, I guess you would say. We changed retention systems, that kind of evolved, and then through the 80s and the 90s and then in the early 2000s. But then ADAS came along and it was like, hey, let's make sure that you're on your toes here, because you're going to have to change and you're going to have to pivot. And there's still a lot of shops out there that kind of are fighting the urge, but I think you're right. I think as we progress into more and more automation in these vehicles, it's going to become one of those ones where it's like, if you do it, yeah, you're great. If you don't do it, you've really got to figure it out, because South Carolina just passed something that no, that's not calibration related. I'm sorry, that's insurance related, like the actual terminology that they have to use. That's right. I'm sorry, that was TPA and insurance related. I apologize about that, bringing that up, guys. So please don't be like, Ghosty don't know what the hell he's talking about, because most of the time I don't. But I do think that you're right. I think that you're on top of something there that is definitely going to be progressing us further as ADAS calibrations. And we, as Auto Glass Safety Council, we're tackling creating a standard for ADAS that is kind of lacking in all industries right now. I know the ASE has but it's not even a standard. It's just a test. Like, they don't have standard parameters to operate around, which is what we're trying to create. Is that standard for the ADAS community. So let's bounce real quickly back to the magazine, though. Where do you see the magazine and Glass Bites growing? Or is it going to be more of a social media thing, an online thing? Are we going to keep the publication?
So, I would definitely love to see our social media grow. I think that's one of the things that I really am trying to work on. So if you guys would like to help me out, please, follow us. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook, and we're developing perhaps a few more platforms other than that. But yeah, I definitely see an increased digital presence because we live in a digital age, right? I am a lover of print. I love being able to feel that print magazine in my hands, and I love being able to design it. Well, I don't do the graphic design, but I love being able to set it out, lay it out, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, definitely a lot more digital, because that's also, it's easier to get out to people as well, if that makes sense. And it's easier for them to interact with, and for them to share. But yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, because I had to take this from audio to video and audio because of my audio was crappy with my equipment, but but I learned that to make it more accessible to more people, I had to do the video as well. It's actually, it was adjustment because at first I didn't really like looking at myself on camera, but now I'm okay with it. Now I'm just natural in front of it. It's like, whatever. It is what it is. You're either going to watch it or you're not, and I hope you watch it. So let's make this grow for the, I like what Jeff's doing with the Auto Glass Safety Council, and that's along the lines because the AGRR and the AGSC are pretty much related, that they work hand in hand. They're not the same, but they work hand in hand. So get out there and get the Auto Glass magazine socials blowing up. Let's see if we can make this happen, everybody. Let's follow, let's share, let's do everything that we need to do so that way, you can get more of Abby's magic. Because if you haven't read one of her articles, please do. I'm sure that you've developed this over years of your craft, but you have a way of keeping the attention on sometimes such a very dull subject. I mean, let's be honest. Who wants to read about the legislation in South Carolina? And if, some people do, but then some people it's like, but just the way you write it in your writing style, you keep calling back to the the reader, a call to action, which I really appreciate. You're like engaging their thoughts and their opinions. And how long did it take you to develop that style? Or is there something like you were just like, as soon as you picked up a pen and started writing, it was like, this is kind of what I'm going to do?
So, well, again, I think it goes back to that attention to detail and also pattern recognition that can come with ADHD. It's one of those things where I'm reading something like, actually the laws typically aren't the hard ones, because typically state laws, especially, they're not going to be more than like a couple pages maybe on the web, right? But when I'm reading through lawsuit court documents, those go on forever, James. And so being able to read through those, as well as, attending financial meetings and whatnot for various of the big companies to be able to report on those and skimming through their financials as well, or reading through their financials as well. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, my eyes stop and go, okay, that's an important detail that people are going to want to know about. And, they might not want to know all the ins and outs of, certain things. For example, you're reading a lawsuit court document and the judge is going back and forth about a whole bunch of things. And I'm like, okay, that's not critical here. And so I think part of it is, yes, that pattern recognition I've always had. Another part of it obviously was learned, when I got my degree. That's one of the things that they teach you, is to pull details out like that. And then a lot of it also was cultivated with the help of Deb and Ellen, with the help of Deb and Ellen, to get me really where I am today. But I'm glad that you think that, James, because that is something that I've been working hard on, is making sure that the relevant information that people need to know, because that's why journalism exists, is to get people the information that is important to them, right? I'm glad that you think that that's easily accessible. That makes me happy.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I do read a fair bit. I never stopped reading, but English is still a hard language for me, even though it's been the only one I've ever done. Even though it's my native language, it's still a hard language to me. And here recently, I've been reading through a lot of forensic science files on contamination, on frit bands and adhesion to them. And also their UV properties, how much carbon black it actually takes to make something UV resistant, you know what I mean? Absorb the radiant, and, which, by the way, it's 2 to 3% by weight. But, I get to the point where it's and I know this is kind of like an ADHD thing too, is it's okay, I'm done reading. It's boring. It's boring. I'm just so an article that is 20 pages long on something like that, and they're using a lot of words that I have to actually stop and look up, because I'm like, man, what does isokinates? I know what that means, but what? And then I have to refigure it out, and it's so I have to stop. So it takes me a long time sometimes to read these articles, and for when I jump into yours, it's just my attention's caught, and I stay clear through it, and I'm like, all right, you still got it. You can still read more than a paragraph before you're done trying to figure out something else to do, or jump on your phone and scroll a little bit more, move off of the article and scroll a little bit more. So yeah, I do appreciate that. And maybe you should start writing some of those forensic science articles, because, oh my God. I mean, okay, well, I will say the ones at Brighton Science, they have a really good. I'm not sure the gentleman that writes their articles, but it's, you know, because they're dealing with recall issues because of adhesion and contamination. So I read a lot of their articles that are online, and like he does a good job. Like he can keep my attention for most of it, but then sometimes it gets in the weeds, and I'm just like, all right, well, I need to take a break, walk away, get a cup of coffee or something. So I do appreciate that about you. And then Ellen and Deb being there as mentors. I mean, they've been in the industry a long time, and you actually latched onto some pretty great mentors there, didn't you?
I really did. Yeah, I couldn't think of anybody better to be able to help me both grow my writing skills, but then also really get me into autoglass and then glass as a whole.
Yeah, I've only known Ellen, like, I met her the year I won. She interviewed me. She was doing the on stage not the on stage, but she was doing the interviews afterwards. And then I think she's a graduate of Kent State, which is one of my children have graduated from Kent State too. So we kind of discussed that a little bit. Actually, my daughter who graduated still lives up there, but I've known Deb for a long time, and I actually consider her one of my mentors. Yeah. Because, you know, you could go to Deb with a suggestion, and, you know, it might not always be like, yes, we're doing it right away, but she's open to the idea, and she ponders it. And when she gets back to you, it's never like a yes or no. It's a, this is why, or this is why not. Like, she comes to you with an explanation. And so I do see Deb as one of my mentors, as far as, you know, the industry goes when I have a question about something. As long as Jacques a huge mentor. Peter Brown's a huge mentor. You know, I have so many mentors in the industry that it's crazy. It's crazy how many people you get to look up to when you're doing this and you're trying to find your way through the madness. And it's good to have people like that. Speaking of which, you get to work with Peter Brown too.
I do,
yeah. Isn't he like the coolest guy? Like,
he really is. He's such a down-to-earth guy. And then I just sit and chat with him about, you know, museums. I used to work at a museum. He works with a museum. So things that are completely outside of the auto glass industry. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. What museum did you work at?
So my summer job in high school was to be a tour guide at like a little living history museum where I grew up in Pennsylvania called the Hans Herr House. Oh. It was built in 1719. It's this, well, for the time, it would have been pretty big, you know, stone house that some of the early German colonial settlers built. So, yeah.
Okay, which they were part of the Amish, Quaker, and later Mennonite groups, right? Over like near Lancaster?
Yeah, not so much Quaker, but yes, Amish Mennonite. This particular family was Mennonite. The Mennonites immigrated a little bit before the Amish did, but yeah, you got it exactly right.
Well, yeah, we have a huge Amish Mennonite population here in Ohio as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get to, and I love guided tours. Like, that's huge. We go to museums. Like, one of my favorite museum to go to is the Natural History Museum in D.C. and the Holocaust Museum in D.C. Those are two of my favorite. I'm just like, yeah, we've ridden our bicycles into D.C. a few times, and it's amazing to go to those museums. My wife and I love museums, by the way. We do it. But going back to Peter, he's so easy to talk to.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so easy to talk to, down to earth. He's always got something interesting to say, and he's in the land of pilgrimage, so it's kind of cool because he's got all these like ins and outs. And then, you know, and I think it's maybe that East Coast vibe too, because like Michael McCarthy, and it might be the accent, it might be what's catching me, Steve and Michael with those guys, and then Peter, I talk to him and I'm just like, those guys are cool, you know, because like just talking to them, and they're so down to earth and they're so relatable. I'm enjoying the fact that they're part of our industry. So that's a rant that I went on, and I apologize, but yeah. And so are you. You're very easy to talk to. Like, you and I met. Did you came in the industry? When did you come into the industry again?
So it would have been the end of 2023. I believe I started just really exactly the end, December of 2023.
Okay, yeah. So you and I met, I think it was like right around that time too, because of my winning was in 2023. So we met then. But like, I found it, you're very approachable. You're very easy to talk to, and you're a pleasure to be around. Like, I mean, every time we've had an interaction like this and in person, you're very easy to talk to, which makes it nice being a journalist, right? You know, it's not, people aren't so standoffish because, you know, you're very easy to talk to. So I definitely appreciate that part. So what are you looking forward to outside of the industry? We're going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes because I have taken enough of your time. But outside of the industry for 2025, what does that hold for Abby?
So I actually, James, quite literally have a sticky note on my wall here that says my goal for the year is to get my life together, right? Which is definitely very achievable, practical goal to have for the year. But I think for me, that really entails making sure that I'm not living life like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, if that makes sense. Because I think
Oh,
that
that's cool.
yeah, I think that that is a habit that I've gotten into for a while, and I think a lot of people can get into. So really, I mean, that just means for me making sure that I'm, both staying on top of the things that can be hard for people with ADHD, like keeping my apartment clean, but then also just really diving headfirst into having fun with everything that I do as well, whether that's, talking to people in the auto glass industry or in my personal life. So, yeah.
It's the having fun part has never come hard for me. The staying on top of things sometimes has been, but the having fun part for me has never really been an issue. But for me would be getting that next level of understanding of myself, because it's definitely cool when you know who you are and you like who you are, and it's taken me 46 years to get there. But I'm finally starting to climb that hill a little bit more of valuing myself. So thank you so much, Abby, for your time. This has been great. I'm so glad you did it on such a short notice, because staying on top of things, I didn't have any shows in the bank and I need to release one tomorrow. So you were just like perfect. I was like, you know what? I haven't had Abby on yet. I've been wanting to have Abby on, and I haven't asked her yet. So thank you for being so accommodating and making this happen for me. I appreciate you so much. Is there anything you want our listeners to hear before we end this? And by the way, don't hang up, because we got to upload as soon as I hit stop record. But anything you want our listeners to know before we leave?
Well, first of all, James, I am extremely honored that you asked me. So thank you so much for having me here. And the only other thing that I want listeners to know is reach out to me. Like James said, I promise I'm not scary. That's part of how I get a lot of story ideas, actually, is by people reaching out to me. So, my email address is abowman@glass.com. And so feel free to shoot me an email. I would love to get some story ideas. And I also just like meeting new people in the industry as well. So yeah,